Listen, I have been a diplomat for the Valerian hegemony for 73 cycles, and I have seen some genuinely bizarre things in my career. I once watched a Krell ambassador accidentally consume his own trade agreement because he mistook the digital tablet for a dietary supplement. I have witnessed a 3-hour debate about whether a comma should be placed before or after a species designation in a peace treaty. I have even survived a ceremonial dinner where the main course was still technically alive and very angry about the situation. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the day the humans sent Valerie Grant to negotiate with the most powerful empire in the Eastern Spiral. Let me set the scene for you, because this is important. The Valerian hegemony controls 17 star systems, commands a fleet of 6,000 warships, and has never, not once in 400 years, lost a territorial dispute. We are the definition of intimidating. Our ships are black as the void between stars. Our soldiers are bred for combat from birth. Our emperor, his eternal magnificence Crater the Unyielding, has personally executed 3 ambassadors who displeased him during negotiations. He keeps their crystallized remains in his throne room as decorative accent pieces. So when the humans, these newcomers who had barely mastered faster than light travel 2 decades ago, requested a meeting to discuss mining rights in the Theta sector, we laughed. Actually laughed. High Command thought it was adorable. Like watching a small creature try to intimidate a predator 3 times its size. The orders came down from Emperor Crater himself. Hold the meeting on Valoria Prime, our capital world. Make it clear that we control every aspect of the negotiation. Show them the fleet. Show them the military installations. Show them exactly what happens when species try to challenge Valerian dominance. Then offer them a humiliating deal and watch them accept it because they have no other choice. Simple, right? We had done this exact same dance with 46 different species over the centuries. It always ended the same way. They arrive, they see our power, they realize they are completely outmatched, and they sign whatever we put in front of them. But here is the thing about humans that we did not understand yet. They do not follow the script. The day of the meeting, I was stationed in the Grand Reception Hall, which is less of a hall and more of an architectural monument to excess and intimidation. The ceiling stretches 40 meters high, decorated with holographic displays of our greatest military victories. The walls are lined with weapons taken from defeated enemies. The floor is polished black stone that reflects everything like a dark mirror, making visitors feel small and exposed. At the far end sits the negotiation throne, elevated 3 meters above floor level, where Emperor Crater would literally look down on the human delegation. My job was simple. Greet the humans, escort them through the building in a way that maximizes their terror and awe, then watch them crumble during actual negotiations. I had done this 46 times before. I was honestly getting bored with how predictable it all was. The human ship landed at exactly the appointed time. One ship. Not even a military vessel. Just a small diplomatic transport that looked like it had been built by committee and then someone decided to paint it an aggressively friendly shade of blue. Our intelligence had told us the humans were sending a single negotiator with 2 assistants. 3 humans total. Against an empire of billions. I walked out to the landing platform with my ceremonial guard, 6 Valerian soldiers in full combat armor carrying weapons that could vaporize a building. The human ship's door opened, and out stepped the assistants first. 2 men, both wearing matching gray suits that looked completely inadequate for a diplomatic negotiation of this magnitude. They looked nervous, which was appropriate. Then she stepped out. Valerie Grant was not what I expected. Human females tend to be smaller than their males, and I had assumed we would be dealing with some scared bureaucrat who could barely make eye contact. Instead, this woman was tall for her species, maybe 1.7 meters, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a style that said she had more important things to worry about than appearance. She wore a simple black suit with a white shirt, and she carried a single data tablet under one arm. But what caught my attention, what made something in my secondary nervous system start sending warning signals, was her face. She was smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not a diplomatic smile. A real, genuine smile, like she was about to enjoy herself immensely. And her eyes. Humans have these expressive eyes that show everything they are thinking, usually. Valerie's eyes were different. They were calm, focused, and there was something in them that reminded me of the way apex predators look right before they strike. "Greetings," I said in standard Galactic, my voice properly formal and cold. "I am Diplomatic Overseer Thalen of the Valerian Hegemony. You will follow me to the reception hall, where His Eternal Magnificence will grant you an audience." She walked right up to me, still smiling, and extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Valerie Grant, United Earth Diplomatic Corps. It is genuinely wonderful to meet you, Overseer Thalen. I have heard so much about Valerian culture and I am absolutely thrilled to be here." I stared at her hand for a moment. We do not do physical contact in Valerian culture. It is considered aggressive. But she kept her hand extended, still smiling, and there was something about the way she stood that made me realize she knew exactly what she was doing and was testing me. I took her hand. Her grip was firm. Too firm. She shook exactly 3 times, maintaining eye contact the entire time, then released and stepped back. "Shall we?" she asked, gesturing toward the building like she was inviting me to take a pleasant walk instead of marching toward her own diplomatic humiliation. The walk through the grand hall was supposed to be intimidating. We passed through the trophy gallery, where we keep the flags of defeated nations. We walked past the memorial to Valerian victory, a massive holographic display showing our ships destroying enemy fleets in glorious detail. We went through the Hall of Subjugation, where plaques list every species that has bent the knee to Valerian power. I kept glancing at Valerie, waiting for the fear to show up. Waiting for her to realize what she was dealing with. Her 2 assistants were properly terrified. I could see sweat on their foreheads. They kept looking around like they expected something to attack them at any moment. But Valerie? She was taking in everything with the air of a tourist visiting a particularly interesting museum. She even stopped at one point to examine a weapon display more closely, nodding to herself like she was filing the information away for later. "Impressive collection," she said, gesturing at a plasma rifle that had been taken from the Keltheran Federation after we crushed their rebellion. "I have always found it interesting how different cultures approach weapon design. Your engineers clearly prioritize intimidation factor alongside functionality." It was not a compliment. It was an analysis. A clinical, detached analysis that somehow made our great military achievements sound like a design choice rather than demonstrations of power. We reached the reception hall. The doors opened automatically, revealing the full glory of Valerian imperial architecture. The emperor sat on his throne, surrounded by his personal guard. High command stood in formation on either side. 30 of the most powerful military leaders in the hegemony, all in full dress uniform, all projecting maximum menace. Valerie walked in like she owned the place. That is the only way I can describe it. She did not hesitate at the door. She did not slow down to take in the intimidating display. She just walked straight toward the throne with her head high and that same calm smile on her face, her assistant scrambling to keep up behind her. Emperor Crater leaned forward slightly. "I have seen that movement before. It means he is intrigued. That is usually bad news for whoever intrigued him." So, his voice boomed across the hall, amplified by the acoustic design to sound even more intimidating than normal. "The humans finally arrive. 1 negotiator. 3 people total. Against an empire that could crush your entire species with a fraction of our military might." He paused, clearly expecting some kind of response. Maybe fear. Maybe an attempt at false bravado. Maybe begging for mercy disguised as diplomatic courtesy. Valerie stopped at the appropriate distance from the throne, looked up at the emperor, and her smile got wider. "Your Eternal Magnificence," she said, her voice carrying perfectly across the massive hall without any artificial amplification. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I know you are an incredibly busy man, what with running an empire and maintaining such an impressive military force. I promise not to take up too much of your valuable time. There was something about the way she said it. It sounded respectful on the surface, but there was an undercurrent that felt almost like mockery. Like she was complimenting a child on their attempt to build a fortress out of furniture. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You requested negotiation rights for mining operations in Theta Sector. This sector has been claimed by the Valerian hegemony for 200 years. What makes you think humanity has any right to resources in our territory? Well, Valerie said, pulling up her data tablet and tapping it a few times. I actually have some questions about that claim. According to the Galactic Resource Treaty of 2407, which I believe the Valerian hegemony signed, territorial claims in unclaimed space require either continuous presence or active resource extraction to remain valid. And according to our sensor data, you have not had any active operations in Theta Sector for at least 37 years. The hall went completely silent. Nobody questions Valerian territorial claims. Nobody. That is literally rule number 1 of galactic politics in this region. You just do not do it. The Emperor's face did something complicated. It went through surprise, then anger, then something that might have been respect, all in the space of about 3 seconds. Are you, he said slowly, questioning the legitimacy of Valerian sovereignty? Oh no, Valerie said quickly. Not at all. I am questioning whether the specific legal framework you use to establish that sovereignty actually supports your current claim under the terms of treaties you signed. It is a completely different thing. One of the high command generals, a massive warrior named Kreth who has personally led campaigns against 7 different species, stepped forward. You dare to lecture us on law? We are the law in this region of space. Valerie turned to look at him, and that is when I saw it. That moment when her diplomatic mask slipped just slightly and something else showed through. Something that made my survival instinct start screaming. General Kreth, she said, and somehow she knew his name without anyone introducing him. I completely understand your position. Might makes right. The strong do what they will and the weak suffer what they must. Classic imperial philosophy. It has worked for your people for 400 years. She paused, still smiling. But here is the thing. It only works as long as everyone believes you are the strongest. The moment someone demonstrates otherwise, the entire structure collapses. And I am not here to challenge your military might. I am here to point out that legal frameworks exist specifically to prevent conflicts that would be costly for everyone involved. Treaties are not signs of weakness. They are tools that strong powers use to avoid expensive wars. The Emperor stood up from his throne. When he does that, it usually means someone is about to die. He is 2.3 meters tall, built like he was designed for combat, and when he stands, everyone in the room instinctively steps back. Except Valerie. She just stood there, looking up at him with that same calm expression. And if we refuse your interpretation? The Emperor asked. If we tell you to leave Theta Sector and never return? What then, human? Valerie tilted her head slightly, like she was considering the question. Then we will leave, she said simply. And 6 months from now, when the Keltheran Federation and the Mranthi Alliance notice that you are willing to ignore your own treaty obligations, they will start questioning their own agreements with you. And a year after that, when smaller powers realize that Valerian territorial claims are not actually backed by legal framework but only by threat of force, they will start pushing boundaries. And 2 years after that, you will be fighting 17 different brush wars across your borders instead of one negotiation with humanity about mining rights. The hall was so quiet I could hear my own circulatory system pumping. Because she was right. Absolutely, completely right. And everyone in that room knew it. The Emperor stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. Now, when I say Emperor Crater laughed, I need you to understand that this almost never happens. In my 73 cycles of diplomatic service, I have heard him laugh exactly 4 times. Twice before executing someone who amused him with their final words. Once when a species accidentally declared war on themselves due to a translation error. And once when he watched a particularly entertaining gladiatorial combat that ended with both participants somehow knocking each other unconscious simultaneously. This laugh was different. It was genuine amusement mixed with something that might have been respect, and that made it exponentially more dangerous. "You are clever," he said, sitting back down on his throne. "Most species that come here are too terrified to think clearly. They stammer and beg and offer us everything they have in exchange for our mercy. You come here and threaten me with political consequences while pretending to offer friendly advice." Valerie's smile did not waver. "I prefer to think of it as illuminating mutual interests, your eternal magnificence. Humanity wants access to mineral deposits in Theta Sector. The Valerian hegemony wants to maintain stable borders and avoid setting precedents that could be exploited by less friendly neighbors. These goals are not actually in conflict." "Everything is in conflict," General Kreth growled. "That is the nature of the universe. Resources are finite. Territory is power. You ask us to share power." "No," Valerie said, turning to face him directly. "I am asking you to trade something you are not using for something you actually need. Political stability has value. Humanity has value. We are new to this region of space, but we learn quickly, we build good ships, and we have a tendency to remember who treated us fairly when we were weak." She let that hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "Or to put it another way, you can gain a potential ally who will respect your territorial integrity and acknowledge Valerian authority in this region. Or you can gain an annoying neighbor who will spend the next 50 years finding every legal loophole in every treaty you have ever signed and slowly eroding your political capital across the eastern spiral. Your choice." I watched the faces of high command as she spoke. Several of them looked ready to order her immediate execution. But several others, the older ones who had actually fought prolonged campaigns and understood the cost of unnecessary conflict, were nodding slightly. Emperor Crater leaned back in his throne, steepling his fingers in front of his face. "You threaten us very politely, human. I prefer enthusiastic honesty to polite lies, your eternal magnificence. Yes, I am absolutely threatening you. But I am also offering you something valuable. A partnership with a species that will honor agreements and help stabilize a region that, if we are being completely honest, has been getting increasingly unstable over the past decade." One of the high command officers, Admiral Vekran, spoke up. "What do you know of regional instability, human? You have been in this space for barely 20 years. Valerie pulled up her data tablet again, swiped through something, then looked back up. "I know that the Mranthi Alliance has been conducting military exercises along your southern border every 3 months for the past 2 years. I know that Keltheran separatist groups have been receiving weapons from somewhere, and your intelligence has not figured out where yet. I know that 3 minor powers in the neutral zone have been in talks about forming a defensive coalition, specifically because they are worried about Valerian expansion." The room went very still again. "I also know," she continued, "that your military budget has increased by 47% over the past 5 years, which suggests you are aware of these problems and preparing for potential conflicts. Which is smart. But expensive. And prevention is usually cheaper than cure." Admiral Vekran's face had gone through several interesting colors. "How do you have access to that information?" Valerie's smile turned slightly mischievous. "Humanity spent most of our history fighting each other. We got very, very good at intelligence gathering. It is one of our more transferable skills." Emperor Crater was studying her with the kind of focus he usually reserved for battle plans. "You are either the bravest negotiator I have ever met or the most foolish. I have not decided which. Probably a bit of both, honestly," Valerie said. "I have been told I have an unfortunate tendency to say exactly what I am thinking instead of what people want to hear. It makes me terrible at parties but occasionally useful in negotiations." And then something unexpected happened. The Emperor laughed again. A real, genuine laugh that actually sounded almost friendly. "I like you," he said. "Which is inconvenient, because I was planning to make an example of humanity's arrogance. But now I find myself curious about what you are actually proposing." Valerie straightened slightly. This was the moment. The entire negotiation had been building to this. "Here is what I propose," she said, her voice shifting into a more formal register. "Humanity gets mining rights in Theta Sector for a period of 50 standard years. In exchange, we formally recognize Valerian sovereignty over the entire region, including areas where your legal claims are questionable. We sign a mutual defense pact covering the southern border, which gives you additional military resources to counter the Mranthi alliance without deploying your own expensive fleets. And we provide you with regular intelligence briefings on regional political movements, because we are going to be gathering that information anyway and sharing it costs us nothing." She paused, then added, "We also include a technology exchange program, because humans have developed some interesting innovations in medical technology and agricultural efficiency that could benefit your civilian populations. And before you say that Valerian pride does not accept charity, I would point out that every successful empire in history has understood that military might means nothing if your population is sick and starving." The High Command exploded into arguments. Half of them were yelling that accepting any deal with humanity showed weakness. The other half were doing calculations about resource costs and political benefits. General Kreth looked ready to challenge Valerie to personal combat. Admiral Vekran was pulling up star charts and running simulations. Emperor Crater held up one hand, and everyone went silent immediately. "You offer us much," he said. "But you ask for the one thing we have spent 400 years ensuring no one else could have. Access to resources we claim as our own. Why would we set this precedent?" "Because the precedent you set is not about sharing resources," Valerie said. "It is about pragmatic alliance building. You make it clear that the Valerian hegemony rewards cooperation with benefits, punishes aggression with overwhelming force, and treats partners fairly. That precedent makes you look strong and reasonable rather than strong and unpredictable. Other species will line up to negotiate with you instead of plotting against you in secret." She walked a few steps closer to the throne, and I tensed, but the guards did not move to stop her. "Here is what I think you actually want, your eternal magnificence. You want an empire that lasts another 400 years. You want stability and prosperity, not endless minor conflicts that drain resources and accomplish nothing. You want to be remembered as the emperor who built something permanent, not just another conqueror whose empire collapsed the moment he died. And you cannot achieve that through fear alone. Fear works in the short term, but it always fails eventually. Respect lasts longer." The emperor stood up again, but this time he walked down from his throne, closing the distance between himself and Valerie. He towered over her, easily twice her mass, radiating the kind of physical intimidation that has made species surrender without a shot being fired. Valerie looked up at him and did not flinch. "You are either brilliantly insightful or you have studied Valerian psychology very carefully," he said quietly. "Both, hopefully," she replied. "I did not come here to win a negotiation, your eternal magnificence. I came here to start a partnership that benefits everyone involved. Humanity does not want war with the Valerian hegemony. We would lose badly, and even if we somehow won, it would cost us everything we have built. But we also will not simply bow and accept whatever terms you dictate, because that sets a precedent for how everyone will treat us going forward." She held his gaze steadily. "So I am offering you a choice. You can crush us, claim our territory, and add humanity to the long list of species that bent the knee to Valerian power. That is the easy path, and it has worked for you many times before. Or you can take a risk on something new. Partner with us. Let us prove that we keep our word. And maybe, just maybe, build something that outlasts both of our lifetimes." The silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity. Then Emperor Crater did something that made my primary and secondary hearts both skip a beat. He extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. 50 years, he said. Mining rights in Theta Sector. Full recognition of Valerian sovereignty. Mutual defense pact. Intelligence sharing. Technology exchange. And if humanity breaks any part of this agreement, I will personally lead the fleet that reduces Earth to radioactive dust. Are we clear? Valerie took his hand and shook it firmly. Perfectly clear, your eternal magnificence. And if the Valerian hegemony breaks the agreement, humanity will make sure every species in the galaxy knows that your treaties are worthless. Mutually assured diplomatic destruction. The Emperor's face split into a predatory grin. I really do like you, human. This is going to be either the best decision I have ever made or the most entertainingly terrible one. Hopefully both, Valerie said. I find life is more interesting when it includes a healthy amount of risk. The formal negotiations took another 6 hours. Valerie went through every clause of the agreement with meticulous attention to detail, catching 3 separate attempts by our legal team to insert clauses that would have given us additional leverage. Each time she found one, she would smile, point it out, and suggest alternative wording that was fair to both parties. By the 3rd hour, our own negotiators were starting to look frustrated. By the 5th hour, they looked impressed. By the 6th hour, they were actively asking for her input on sections that were causing problems. When we finally finished, Valerie stood up, stretched, and looked absolutely exhausted for the first time since arriving. Well, she said. That was intense. Shall we schedule a follow-up meeting in 3 months to review implementation progress? Emperor Crater, who had stayed for the entire negotiation despite having approximately 1 million other things he could have been doing, nodded. Agreed. And Valerie Grant, when you return, you will attend a state dinner as an honored guest rather than a supplicant. I want to hear more about human history and how your species learned to fight yourselves so effectively. Valerie's smile returned. I would be delighted, your eternal magnificence. Though I should warn you that human history is basically a long series of creative ways we found to be terrible to each other, followed by equally creative ways we found to cooperate instead. It is not always a cheerful subject. Neither is Valerian history, the Emperor said. We will compare scars. As I escorted Valerie and her assistants back to their ship, one of them, a man named Marcus who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up. I cannot believe that actually worked, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I was certain we were going to die at least 17 different times. Valerie laughed. The trick is to remember that even the scariest empires are run by people making rational decisions. Emperor Crater is not a mindless tyrant. He is a strategic thinker who built an empire that has lasted 4 centuries. People like that do not stay in power by making stupid choices based purely on ego. But you called out his military spending, the other assistant, David, said. You basically told him his empire was showing weakness. How is that not suicidal? Because I framed it as information he could use rather than criticism, Valerie explained. I made it clear that I understood his problems and was offering solutions. Nobody minds being told about problems if you are simultaneously handing them the tools to fix those problems. I stopped walking, and they all turned to look at me. You were not sent to negotiate, I said slowly, pieces clicking together in my mind. You were sent to terrify us into accepting your terms by demonstrating how much you understood about our situation. Earth did not send a diplomat. They sent a weapon. Valerie's smile turned slightly sad. Overseer Thalen, I am a diplomat. That is literally my job title. But yes, I was specifically chosen for this assignment because I have a reputation for being extremely difficult to intimidate and unfortunately good at intimidating others. Humanity needed someone who could walk into the scariest empire in the region and make them think twice about casual aggression. You could have gotten yourself killed, I said. Probably, she agreed. But I did not, and now humanity has mining rights, a powerful ally, and a reputation for being reasonable but not weak. Worth the risk. They boarded their ship, and I watched it take off, still trying to process everything that had happened. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Emperor Crater had followed us out to the landing platform. That, he said, was the most entertained I have been in a decade. Make a note, Thalen. When dealing with humans in the future, send our best people. Do not underestimate them again. Yes, your eternal magnificence. He turned to walk back inside, then paused. Also, start a background check on human diplomatic training programs. I want to know how they produce negotiators like that. We might want to recruit some of them. As I filed my report that evening, I kept coming back to the same conclusion. The galaxy had spent years wondering what role humanity would play in galactic politics. Now we knew. They were not conquerors. They were not victims. They were partners who understood power and wielded diplomacy like a precisely sharpened blade. And they had just taught the Valerian hegemony that fear was useful, but respect was better. Somewhere on Earth, someone was probably getting a promotion. And somewhere in Valerian High Command, people were already revising their estimates of how dangerous humanity actually was. The answer, I realized, was significantly more dangerous than anyone had predicted. Just not in the way we expected.